This is American Freedom News with Rick Wiles.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
There have been untold injuries in this and untold deaths.
There have been thousands of casualties today. 5 floors of the Pentagon have collapsed.
Several area hospitals say they are already booked to capacity.
Still thick black smoke billowing from the scene where both towers collapsed.
The target this morning is America, the enemy at this point unknown.
American Freedom News, the radio program on the cutting edge of today's news.
A hijacking that then slammed into the World Trade Center. Both towers of the World Trade Center are gone after being attacked. Still thick black smoke billowing from the scene where both towers collapsed.
This is a special report from American Freedom News. And now, live from his studio in Granbury, Texas, here's the founder and president of American Freedom News, Rick Wiles.
Here are today's top headlines. The twin pillars of capitalism, the Trade Center towers, are suddenly gone. International bankers scramble to prop up a faltering global economy. Insurance companies brace for damage claims in the billions. A regional airline has declared bankruptcy as frightened passengers cancel flights. President Bush calls for a global military alliance against terrorism. The news media covers up the gruesome truth. Bloody Muslim terrorists slit the throats of American flight attendants. Red China warns the U.S. to stay away from Taiwan. Russian military jets harass American planes. Anthrax found in Minnesota deer and cattle. And the Vatican orders major revisions to the Holy Bible. I'm Rick Wiles, and this is American Freedom News, the radio program with news too hot for television. The headlines of today's Washington Post proclaim an icon of capitalism. Now it's all gone. World's 5th tallest buildings housed offices and major corporations, says the Washington Post. The article says for 3 decades, the Twin Towers of New York's World Trade Center stood as the symbol of American economic might, as powerful an icon for capitalism as the Statue of Liberty is for freedom. The article says that scores of corporations had offices there, including financial giants like Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, the biggest single tenant, with 1/8 of the space in the lower South Tower. In fact, Morgan Stanley Dean Witter leased approximately 25 floors in those buildings, 3,500 employees housed in those buildings. A full list listed at our website, American Freedom News, of the major corporations at that building. But the headline says, now it's all gone. BBC News. The World Trade Center, situated in New York's financial district, was once one of the most potent symbols of the financial might of the United States. But it's gone. The question we must ask tonight: do the American people fully comprehend what has happened in the last 48 hours in the United States of America? Reuters News Service reporting today, the world's financial center resembled a desolate war zone, with the streets of lower Manhattan coated in gray ash and a thick trail of brown smoke pouring into the sky from where the World Trade Center towers once stood. U.S. soldiers patrolled the area of heaps of twisted, steaming rubble and overturned cars where 2 hijacked commercial aircraft slammed into the buildings. U.S. Army Corps Andy Marcus, quoted in the Reuters article, is saying it's nasty, it's devastating, it's something you never want to see. Has it hit? Has it sunk into the American people what has happened to the United States of America, that we have come under attack? The bloodiest attack in the history of the United States on the soil of this land. This is even worse than Pearl Harbor. Our Pentagon on fire. Major portion of the Pentagon collapsed. These are horrible, horrible scenes that the world is watching this day. Now, Wall Street, which originally said earlier today that they would open tomorrow, they will not be open tomorrow. The opening of Wall Street, the stock markets has been delayed again, this time until Friday. Now, the London Guardian had this headline today: financial officials move to calm shaky markets. The London Guardian said top monetary officials moved swiftly to steady the markets after the terror attacks on the United States. European Central Bank President Wim Duisenberg has said that the European Central Bank is willing to pump in emergency funds to prop up the American economy. Isn't this thing opposite of the way things usually are? When the United States of America, the Federal Reserve Bank, is who comes to the rescue of other nations. Now it's the other way around. And it is the U.S. economy that is teetering. But again, I'm not sure if the American people fully comprehend the impact of what has happened. London Financial Times says U.S. banks battle to maintain global business. The London Financial Times says New York-based financial institutions implemented disaster recovery plans on Wednesday to maintain their global operations, while efforts were made to assess the impact of Tuesday's disasters. Federal Reserve said on Wednesday it added $38 billion in temporary reserves to the U.S. banking system. Spokesman for the New York Federal Reserve said earlier that the bank would add more reserves as needed. And as I said, the president of the European Central Bank pledging to pump money into the world economy in order to keep the global economy from skidding into a depression. Insurance companies have taken a major hit. Washington Post says that the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the destruction of the 4 hijacked airliners will add up to the costliest man-made disaster in United States history. It's going to be a huge loss. They're estimating that the claims will be in the billions of dollars. Report that I have out of Geneva, Switzerland, reporting that one major insurance company in Switzerland expecting to have claims over $730 million turned in. A German insurance company expecting claims over $903 million. Already there has been one economic casualty. Midway Airlines filed bankruptcy today. Now, Midway was already teetering on financial collapse, but with thousands of frightened passengers canceling their flight reservations, executives at Midway Airlines threw in the towel today and said, that's enough, we can't go anymore. 1,700 employees put out of work immediately. And then the big story that I think the news media is ignoring, but I don't think it's definitely the media has been instructed to ignore this, and we can understand why, for national security reasons, and that is the destruction brought upon the Pentagon. Pentagon was hit in a massive way, and earlier today the fire was still raging at the Pentagon. Estimates of over 800 casualties at the Pentagon. Fire in the walls, in the hallways of our military defense center. This is not a sight we want our enemies to see. The headquarters of the United States military in shambles and on fire. And again, to emphasize the gravity of what has happened, just listen to this next article. This is the Washington Post. U.S. military forces in the United States and around the world were put on the highest alert as the Pentagon deployed a loose air defense network of warships along the east and west coast of the United States and dispatched an unknown number of interceptor and reconnaissance aircraft to hunt for unauthorized airplanes flying over the skies of the United States of America. Post says that 10 warships, including 2 aircraft carriers, were steaming to positions where they could provide protection to New York City and the nation's capital, while U.S. Marines and Army troops across the United States and at U.S. military bases around the world went to ThreatCon Delta, the military's highest state of alert. Well, maybe now the American people will demand in a clear and loud voice to the President of the United States, to the Congress, to the military, it is time to bring home all the American troops who are protecting the borders of other nations, doing the peacekeeping work of the United Nations. It is time to bring home the American troops that are in Bosnia and Kosovo and all the other hot spots around the world that have nothing to do with the safety of the American people. We have National Guard troops from here in Texas and many other states serving in Europe, in Asia, and Africa, when they should be here defending the United States of America. And maybe after this tragedy, maybe the American people will unite together and order, not ask, not request, but order the politicians of this country to bring our troops home and protect us, the American people, the taxpayers, the citizens of this country. I'm Rick Wiles. You're listening to American Freedom News. This is the most politically incorrect newscast and commentary on radio. I'll be back in a minute with more news, including reports about Russian MiG fighters harassing American planes last week. You've got to hear the details on this. Another story that America's news media has not been reporting. And we're also going to talk about, I think, one of the most horrendous stories that has been covered up in this tragedy, how the Muslim terrorists slit the throats of the 2 American airline flight attendants. America's left-wing liberal news media not reporting the gruesome facts about this horrible atrocity against 2 American citizens. I'm Rick Wiles. This is American Freedom News. America has been attacked. This was an act of war. This was not just a terrorist attack. It was an act of war. Thousands and thousands of American citizens had met their instant death because we did not protect the borders of the United States of America. The nightmare came true. The nightmare that many of us have been having for many years, warning the people in the United States government, warning the left-wing liberal news media, warning the complacent American citizens in this nation. We are not guarding the borders of the United States of America. And someday we're going to pay a terrible price for our complacency. Well, it has happened. Tens of thousands of people have died. Incredible destruction. Perhaps over the long term, it may mean bringing about a depression in the United States economy, because we've not fully comprehended the economic impact to the United States of America. Our Pentagon, part of the Pentagon collapsed in burning. Incredible, incredible scenes on television around the world. All because our government has failed to protect the citizens. Our government has failed to live up to the oath of office. When those men and women took political office, they were sworn to an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and defend the borders of this country and to defend the people of this land, and they have failed. They allowed bloody terrorists to come into this country, to easily seize aircraft, to slam the aircraft into major buildings, to slit the throats of American citizens, to burn down our military complex. In Japan, if this had happened in Japan, political leaders would be falling on their swords. They would be bowing out. They would be resigning in disgrace. And we need to have some heads rolling in the United States government. By the way, there is a movement going on right now. It's been reported in the last several hours that several top U.S. senators and congressmen are demanding that President Bush fire CIA Director George Tenet. Sounds like a good idea to me. The CIA has utterly failed in providing intelligence to the United States government and to the United States population. Why would we have an intelligence service? Why would we have spies if they do not know what's going on in this country? It's being reported tonight by Fox News. Senior Pentagon sources tell Fox News that members of the Senate, Richard Shelby of Alabama, Fred Thompson of Tennessee, are supporting a public call for CIA Director George Tenet to resign. Fox News reporting that the source said that Senator Shelby, Vice Chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, has also been working with Senator Bob Graham, a Democrat from Florida, who is supposedly undecided. Graham is the chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence. Source said that Senator Shelby and others critical of Director Tenet view the bombings on Tuesday as evidence of a massive intelligence failure, one brought on by Tenet's proud embrace of a restriction on the CIA's ability to recruit foreign agents with criminal backgrounds. Now, it's interesting that Mr. Tenet has spent an enormous amount of time in the Middle East. Former President Clinton was the first president to ever involve the CIA director in so-called peace negotiations. And then when President Bush came into the White House, he continued to practice, and Mr. Tenet was being shuttled back and forth to the Middle East with the Palestinians and the Jews, the Israelis, trying to work out a peace settlement. And while he's over in the Middle East trying to work out a deal with the Palestinians and the Israelis, we've got a bunch of Arab terrorists coming through the back door into the United States of America and killing tens of thousands of Americans. They're laughing in his face as he's over there trying to solve their problems. They're over here creating problems for us. I want to recommend, before I go into some other subjects here, I want to remind you that this newscast is made possible because of the support of the listeners. We have accomplished something with this newscast that's really unheard of. Totally independent newscast. We're not on any mainstream radio station. We are broadcasting on the internet and on world band shortwave radio, and we have accomplished the incredible feat of assembling an enormous audience of citizens all over the United States tuning into this program every day. And because of the listeners, because of the citizens, and because of our loyal sponsors, we're able to keep this program going every day. And one of the most outstanding sponsors that we have had in this program's history is Christian Telecom. They have been with us 9 consecutive months ever since we began accepting advertisers on the program. They were one of the first to come on board. They have been with us 9 consecutive months. We're very proud of our relationship with Christian Telecom, one of the largest telecom companies in the United States of America and one of the fastest growing telecoms. They've got a great plan called Roam Free, 10 hours of long-distance calling from any phone in the United States for one flat rate of $29.95 per month plus an access fee. I encourage you to give Christian Telecom a call, 1-800-460-1030. Make sure you tell them I heard about it on American Freedom News with Rick Wiles, and I'm switching over to Christian Telecom because you're backing Rick and American Freedom News. Their telephone number again, 1-800-460-1030. World Tribune reporting today that Iraqi intelligence agents recruited Saudi billionaire Osama bin Laden and his Islamic allies to carry out the suicide attacks in the United States of America. This information is being provided to the U.S. government by Israeli Mossad agents. Now, we reported on this program last year that there was a merger that took place between Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. I distinctly remember on this program warning our listeners, get ready. We have reports coming out of the British news, such as the London Times and the London Telegraph, that Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein had basically formed a merger between their terrorist operations, and that was about a year ago. And I warned you, we're going to see the fruits of this merger someday in the United States of America. Now, earlier today, the United States government invoked for the first time in the history of NATO an article in the NATO treaty that would require all of the NATO nations to assist the United States of America in an attack on this enemy. Now, NATO had a meeting today. Associated Press says in a strong show of support, Washington's NATO allies declared that the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington can be considered an attack on the whole alliance if they were directed from abroad. NATO Secretary General Lord Robertson said, quote, an attack on one is an attack on all. The decision means that all of the American allies in NATO must provide support for any military operation. Reuters news service says that the United States says it is trying to build a global coalition against terrorism, including allies, Russia, China, Muslim states, after the World Trade Center and Pentagon attacks. President Bush spoke with the leaders of 4 other permanent members of the UN Security Council, Britain, China, France, and Russia. Secretary of State Colin Powell also met and conferred with the leaders of other states. Mr. Bush said, we will rally the world, we will be patient, we will be focused. This sounds eerily similar to his father building a New World Order coalition in 1990, the first time nations came together against a common enemy. Now it's happening again. His son saying that he's building a global military alliance. The FBI has targeted Hamas supporters in Florida in the investigation. A lot of things happened today in the investigation. The story I really want to bring up, because in a few minutes, in about 10 minutes, I'm going to open up the phone lines to callers. But the one story I want to talk about is a story. It's gruesome. It is terrible. It is shocking. But this is the story that America's left-wing news media will not report. This is too hard for the liberals in America to report this because they don't want the American citizens to rise up and be outraged over this. But we now know that the hijackers on the American Airlines Flight 11 out of Boston slit the throats of the 2 female flight attendants. The Boston Globe did report it, but absolutely nobody else is touching this story. Boston Globe said, according to sources interviewed by the Globe, a flight attendant on the American flight called back to Boston to report that flight attendants and passengers had been stabbed by one of the hijackers who slit their throats. And then another report, this said once in the air, the hijackers of the Boston flights used box cutters and other knife-like weapons made of plastic handles embedded with razor blades to kill flight attendants and lure a pilot from the cockpit, after which they were able to seize control of the plane. They also used mace to immobilize the passengers in the business and first class section of the aircraft. Now, that was a report by ABC News. But if you notice, ABC News simply said they used razor blades to kill the flight attendants, They didn't really tell the truth. They slit their throats, which is typical of Muslims, bloody, violent Muslims who slit the throats of their victims. That is what's coming to the streets of America when jihad is fully in operation in America, because we have allowed millions of these Arabs to come into this country without any security background check. They're allowed to come over the border from Canada. I reported on this program about 2 months ago a British news article that there are bases of operation, military training bases in Mexico being used by Islamic terrorists as a base of operation to enter the United States of America. That's why I'm so adamant about talking about patrolling and closing the borders of the United States of America between Mexico and Canada. We have lost control of our borders, and now we see the results of our lax protection of this nation. In just a few minutes, I want to open up the phone lines. We want to have callers. We give callers an opportunity to call in from across the United States and give us your opinion about what is going on. I want to play a soundbite from a message I gave to an audience in Louisville, Texas. This was in February of 1999, and I'm playing this because I want my audience across the United States to hear with your own ears. I have been warning for a number of years about the penetration of Muslim terrorists in this country. Now, I'm not talking about every single Arab that's in this country. I'm talking about Arab terrorists, militant Muslim terrorists that are in this country for one purpose: to bring bloodshed, violence, and destruction to the people of the United States of America. And we have no idea if it's in the thousands or even in the millions, the number of militant Muslims that are now roaming the streets of this country. But I gave a speech in Louisville, Texas, February 1999. Here is a brief soundbite from that speech. The Muslims. Osama bin Laden has been saying for months he will destroy America. Several weeks ago, Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein held merger talks in Iraq. They're uniting for a great war against America. Several weeks ago, Louis Farrakhan, the American leader of the black Muslims, traveled to Libya and had a high-level meeting with Muammar Gaddafi. Egyptian Jihad and Hamas and other radical groups have declared that there will be jihad against America. Jihad is holy war. And they said every American must be killed. Now, this is going to shock you, but Hamas, the radical Palestinian terrorist group which kills Jewish babies and school children, has a headquarters in Richardson, Texas. Matter of fact, Dallas-Fort Worth area is penetrated with radical Muslims. El-Haj, who was Osama bin Laden's top assistant, was arrested by the German secret police months ago. But where did he live? Arlington, Texas. One of the highest concentrations of militant Muslims is in Oklahoma City. And for years, Muslims have been meeting in hotels. I'm talking meetings of 1,000 people or more. And they have been flying terrorists into the United States to speak at those meetings. I've seen the videotapes. And those terrorists in U.S. hotels telling Muslims there must be jihad in America. You must take the American children and cut their hands off, cut their intestines out. I've seen the videotapes. Do you know what's coming?
Do you have any inkling of an idea what's coming?
What is coming, my friends, our worst nightmare, jihad, holy war in the streets of America. I've been warning the American public for many years now that there will be a jihad in the streets of America, that these people are bent on the destruction of our country. The American people cannot comprehend this. We are a totally different type of people. The American people are not the kind of people that hate and despise others. And so it's hard for us to understand and comprehend that there are people around the world that want our blood. They want our destruction. They want to see our nation burn. They want us to fall. They want to totally rub us into the dirt. But there are people, many people around the world, and separately they can't do it, but together, if they link up together, they could bring down the United States of America. And that has been the message that I have been broadcasting for years. And so, our freedoms are at stake. Our freedoms are at risk. Our liberty, our Constitution, our way of life, our lives, our children, our wives, our families, everything is at risk because these people are here and they are bent on our destruction. As I said on yesterday's program, America will change. It will never be the same. We turned a page yesterday. In the history of this country, we will never, ever be the same again. And we're going to enter a very difficult period of time, and we're going to have to take a stand. And we're going to have to root out these people in our country. There may be gunfire in this country. We may see military action by U.S. troops inside our cities. All I can say is, America, we need to cry out to God to save our land.
God bless America.
America is under attack. Isn't it bizarre to hear a radio commercial here in the United States advertising for sale Israeli gas mask? It's bizarre. It's weird. Maybe some people hearing the ad from Ready Made Resources saying, that's scary. Why are they advertising Israeli gas masks? Well, they're advertising Israeli gas masks because we're going to need them. And maybe you might be saying, hey, Rick, you're taking it too far. You're going a little bit out here on the edge with this thing. Oh, really? Am I? Well, if you can convince me that the bombing didn't take place yesterday, if you can convince me that it was all a movie like everybody on TV keeps saying, it's just a movie, it's like a movie. No, it's not like a movie, it's reality. If you can convince me of that it didn't really happen, then, well, maybe we won't have to buy an Israeli gas mask. But we are going the same route as all of these other nations. We're going to have Islamic terrorism in the streets of the United States of America. It's already happened, big time. They didn't just blow up a car. They didn't just blow up a school bus. They destroyed two of the biggest buildings in the world. They killed tens of thousands of people. They tried to crash into the White House. They crashed into the Pentagon. We are under an attack, and it's going to continue, and it's going to get worse. I want to open up the phone lines to callers. Our number is 817-579-7557. Again, 817-579-7557. We have a caller on the line now, Terry from Central Pennsylvania. I believe they're in the State College area. Terry, can you hear me? Terry? Terry, are you with us? Hold on. Okay, I don't have Terry. We'll try to get him back on the phone line again. And if you want to call us, our telephone number 817-579-7557. What we've got to do, we need to get some new equipment that will handle the call-ins during live broadcasts. We've jerry-rigged this and trying to put it together, and we're going to have to buy some expensive equipment to make this happen. Anyhow, we'll try to get Terry back on the line. I do want to tell you about the chilling story that was reported yesterday I had this on the website, but we just didn't get time to report it on the program. This was reported by Bill Gertz. Russian warplanes harass U.S. aircraft over the Pacific. Russian warplanes threatened patrolling U.S. Navy P-3 aircraft over the Pacific Ocean last week as American airplanes monitored a military exercise. At one point during the aerial harassment, a Russian MiG-31 interceptor pilot flew his jet within 50 feet of the American P-3 patrol. The incident, says the Washington Times, was very similar to the Chinese incident earlier in the year. Bill Gertz says that one alarming sign of the Russian intercept was a radio message sent by the Russian MiG-31 pilot to his base, stating that his fire control radar had locked on to U.S. surveillance planes. Now, that means when they have a radar lock, it means that is the final step before firing and bringing down the other aircraft. Now, Russia today denied the report in the Washington Times. This report, we have it at our website today, AmericanFreedomNews.com, says Russian military officials claimed that Russian warplanes did not threaten U.S. aircraft during a military exercise over the Pacific Ocean last week. Russian military spokesman describing the report as nonsense. South China Morning Post says that Taiwan's President Chen is urging China to join hands to maintain peace in the region as the island's military went on alert after devastating terror attacks in the United States. Mr. Chen said in a televised address to the nation, facing this international emergency, we urge the Communist Chinese authorities to jointly maintain the situation in the Taiwan Strait and the stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Mr. Chen, who met with top military and national security officials at an emergency meeting, asked the 400,000-man armed forces of Taiwan to raise their alertness to prevent any sudden incidents. My translation of this, President of Taiwan said to the Chinese communists yesterday, please, please, Mr. Dragon, don't eat us right now while America is burning. One of the top PLA generals warned the United States in a veiled message to keep our nose out of Taiwan. Again, this was reported South China Morning Post. One of the Chinese military's leading foreign policy makers yesterday delivered a stark warning to what he called international forces to keep out of Taiwan, saying that the standoff in the Taiwan Strait had become, quote, grimmer and more complex. General Zhong, Deputy Chief of Staff of the PLA, blamed increased tensions on pro-independence forces on the island. He went on to issue his warning to so-called international forces to stay out of Taiwan's affairs with China. Senator Biden, Democrat of Delaware, has opened up his mouth again to aid and abet the Chinese communists. Last month he went to Beijing and met with the top Chinese communist leaders, and as soon as he left Beijing, he came back to the United States and announced he was going to do everything he could to stop President Bush from building the missile defense system. Now, he said that the U.S. will not come to Taiwan's aid if China attacks the country. Speaking to the National Press Club in Washington, Senator Biden warned both sides to refrain from reckless action. So you've got a top U.S. senator, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chairman, sending out a message to Taiwan: you cannot count on help from the United States of America if you're attacked. Again, he is aiding and abetting the Chinese communists. Let's see, I've got a caller on the line. Ron, I believe, calling from St. Louis, Missouri. Ron, can you hear me?
This is Rich in New York.
I've got Rich in New York. I knew I've got somebody. Rich, what can we do for you tonight?
Well, good evening, Rick. Just listening to these news articles you're reading off here, and I feel an aurora.
Hey, Rich, could you turn down your radio? It's we get a...
yes.
Okay.
That better?
Yes.
Okay. I feel an aurora about these news articles with the lack of trust amongst nations here all of a sudden and countries. I have a feeling that perhaps the NAFTA agreement's not helping matters any.
What do you mean by that?
Maybe. Well, you take a look already. China's up against us, and Taiwan is going at it here now, and Canada has a little bit of mistrust with America, and right here in our backyards just about, Mexico was having a hard time getting in, and, you know, on and on and on it goes. I think this NAFTA agreement is getting in the way.
Okay, well, listen, we appreciate your comment. We're going to take another call. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. On the subject of Taiwan and China, the U.S. may have decided on a much cheaper data link system that the U.S. government is going to provide to Taiwan. Now, the Pentagon announced in July an agreement to sell an advanced tactical data link system to Taiwan. However, the U.S. government is currently urging Taiwan to accept an alternative data link package with inferior specifications. This was a report that was in the Taipei Times. The article says that the U.S. is trying to persuade the military to reconsider its request for an upgraded version of the Joint Tactical Information Distribution System known as Link 16. The Link 16 is an advanced tactical data link system being used by the U.S. military and NATO. Now the U.S. wants Taiwan to buy an alternative system that Taiwan's military says is inferior. I've got an update on anthrax outbreaks in the United States and North America. Anthrax has appeared in Alberta at a ranch near Calgary. Last month, anthrax was found in cattle on a ranch about 60 miles east of Calgary. We're not seeing much reporting here in the United States about it. Also, Minnesota state wildlife and health officials are warning deer hunters in the state of Minnesota to take proper precautions when handling deer carcasses after anthrax was discovered in dozens of cattle and deer in northwestern Minnesota. We have another caller on the line. I hope so. Let's see. I'm not even going to attempt to guess who it is. I'll let the caller identify himself. Are you there, sir? Do we have anyone? We don't have anybody. All right. I think we're just going to go ahead and buy the equipment before we try this again. In Great Britain, foot and mouth virus, mad cow, all kinds of stuff flaring up. Again, this stuff is bizarre. What's going on all over the world? Plagues and pestilence and war, disease, things that are prophesied about in the Bible. That's what's taking place. The Irish Times out of Ireland says nearly 8 million sheep in Ireland have been tagged with identification tags by the government. Thousands of animals trapped in the upland areas of northern Great Britain will starve to death this winter. I told you about this several weeks ago, that in the northern part of Great Britain it is customary over hundreds and hundreds of years for the sheep to be brought down off the mountainsides, the hillsides in the September month. They're brought into the lowlands and into the barns for the fall and winter months where they can get shelter and be fed. However, Tony Blair has implemented a ban on the movement of livestock. The farmers crying out that this means that the sheep will starve to death or freeze to death. However, Mr. Blair is going to continue with his ban. The London Times says today thousands of animals trapped in upland areas and on overcrowded farms could starve to death in the worst affected foot and mouth areas this autumn. The bleak prospect was highlighted yesterday by farmers' leaders who fear that the tough new animal movement controls to help eradicate the disease will trigger animal welfare problems. The London Telegraph reported today tens of thousands of dairy calves are being shot and buried on farms because the market for them has collapsed due to foot and mouth and mad cow restrictions. In Santa Barbara, California, a pet store employee died after scratching his finger on a rat cage. The employee developed a severe heart ailment and died in what doctors called a rare case of rat bite fever. Young man Jeffrey Banks, age 24, was on a respirator when he died Sunday at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. In Asia, Japan has been shocked at the discovery of mad cow disease in the food supply of Japan. Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea have banned imports of beef and beef products from Japan. LA Times saying Japan reacted with fear and disbelief Tuesday to reports that the nation has discovered mad cow disease. The headline in the Japanese newspaper said mad cow disease could spread nationwide. In Canada, in Quebec, the Quebec government is offering meningitis vaccinations to nearly 2 million children and young people. 8 children have died already in Quebec this year. The vaccinations will be available to the citizens of Quebec up to the age of 20. The Quebec government is launching a full-scale public relations campaign urging parents to bring their children in for the meningitis vaccination. Listen to this. This is out of the London Times. The Catholic Church has ordered a major revision to the Bible. This is being reported in the London Times. The Vatican is to abandon decades of secrecy and obstruction to allow changes in the Bible based on revelations in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The London Times says the extent of the changes is expected to be disclosed this month, but the revised version of the New Jerusalem Bible will take 5 years to complete. The scrolls have been the subject of controversy between Jewish and Roman Catholic scholars since they were found in caves on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea in 1947. The Vatican has been accused of keeping them secret for fear that they would undermine Christianity. Incredible news articles. It's unbelievable, the stuff that we're reporting every day. If I tried to make it up, I couldn't do it. All I have to do is look in the newspapers around the world. Bible prophecy screaming across the headlines. It is just mind-boggling what is happening. The things that many of you told your friends and relatives and neighbors and co-workers, you told them for years that these things would happen someday. Well, now they're happening. And they're happening, and your friends and neighbors and co-workers still don't believe it. And yet it's happening right in front of us. It is no longer a possibility. It's no longer theory. It is actually happening. Don't forget, take time tonight before you go to bed. Pray for this nation. God bless you.